President Vladimir Putin felt hemmed in as he was, but he pledged retribution against Wagner fighters who were heading towards Moscow and capturing several cities along the way. However, 36 hours later, a sudden agreement with Belarus swiftly diffused the crisis that emerged with remarkable speed. President of Belarus, Lukashenko, stepped in, and what followed thereafter was actually nothing short of a miracle. It was as if there was a sudden aberration and then peace, as in maybe temporary. Yevgeny Prigozhin agreed to end the standoff and also agreed to proceed to Belarus. However, despite the temporary resolution, uncertainties still linger, with experts cautioning that the rare insurrection is unlikely to dissipate so quickly or easily without future repercussions. There is a sense of a strange eeriness, and many are wondering if Putin shall let go of what drove a major chink in his armor. Is he waiting in the wings to strike when the time is right? Who knows? We shall discuss that. Ambassador Troganayat, if I can start with you. It's kind of juvenile to sit on past precedents, but do you think Putin, who's known for not really taking things easy, do you think that he will seek revenge now when the time is right?
Well, I think one thing is sure as far as Putin is concerned, that he is unforgiving. There is no doubt about it if you see the past history and his own track record. At the same time, this man was his own man. He is not somebody who was out of his outer circle or somebody from outside. But he went rogue. He has been giving signals for that for quite some time now. There has been a direct problem between him and the army top brass, as well as the defense minister Shoigu. So he has been mentioning what is known to the world mostly, that there is a tremendous corruption, inefficiency, and they are trying to undermine him. The fact remains is that on the ground, he has shown success where none existed for the time being. I mean, whether it is Bakhmut, whether it was Crimea, or in different other parts of the world. So he thought that he has got the legitimacy, and he continued to have the trust. But if the reports are to be believed, and most of them have, of course, come from the Western media, that there has been, and if you subscribe to conspiracy theory, then perhaps he was fooled around by other oligarchs as well as some people in the Kremlin. So Putin at the moment has tried to just sideline him, put him into exile, but it has also given him a handle to basically tackle the other two guys, the General Gerasimov as well as Defense Minister Shoigu, with whose performance President Putin has not been very happy. So therefore, it is important to see that how it will go out. But if, in my view, the days of this Prigozhin are basically numbered.
General Chauhan, let me bring you in and ask you one question which has really been, kind of dominated the narrative, as it were, that did this mutiny, did it actually expose Russia's intel failure? I mean, what is it? Suddenly someone walks in. I mean, is it that easy for somebody to do this? I mean, there are two theories. Whenever there is a conspiracy, there are two theories always that, of course, people knew within internally, those who are part of the Russian army, and some say nope. It was friends turned foe, and the way the chief of the Wagner militia kind of walked in, he just betrayed Putin and did it. But then the thing is, very, very important question is that was it an intel failure or not?
Good evening, Sudha. Thank you for calling me on the show. It's very strange. The number of narratives that have occurred from Prigozhin's mutiny is actually, there are three main narratives here. One is almost immediately, say about after 5 hours, the US government said in a press briefing or in an internal note that they had anticipated this and they had already talked and briefed President Biden about this likely mutiny, and that Prigozhin was talking of mutiny for a week, 10 days before this. That was the first narrative. So there was supposed to be mutiny. The second is, was this an elaborate charade by Prigozhin and Putin to one, create create a feint or create a problem within the Ukraine front, create some confusion within the NATO, or actually target Shoigu, the defense minister of Russia. Or third, he actually did what he did, and that he did it. But I can't imagine someone who's been a part of the system, someone who's been so close to Putin, to actually do what he did. And that's the issue. Because people like this who are close, and Prigozhin and President Putin have been very close. They come from St. Petersburg, they've been close as young men, and he actually owes his growth to President Putin. So this kind of narrative that can something like this happen, can somebody cross 300, 400 kilometers through the Russian territory and almost reach 200 kilometers short of Moscow without being stopped? I don't know. It doesn't stand to reason.
The mind boggles, one has been, the mind really boggles that how is this even possible,
Exactly. Where are the hinterland troops?
Yes,
Why
absolutely.
wasn't he stopped? And even his taking over the Rostov-on-Don headquarters of the southern district, it doesn't make sense. He wasn't opposed at all. And the people on Rostov-on-Don, you see the photographs that come out or the videos that have come out, are not treating them like traitors or like people who creating a mutiny. It's like an elaborate drama.
And therefore, there is, General, there is another question, and I'll go to Major General Sivach here. Major General Sivach, I want to ask you that what does all this prove? Like what, we just heard the panelists saying, and what even I said, the mind boggles. Do you think it clearly, points towards terrible factionalism in Russian army? Because see, the other theory is, of course, there are conspiracy theories, after theories, but the other one, which has a lot of credence, is that this oligarch, this head of the Wagner militia, wouldn't have been able to kind of go there with such brazenness unless there was somebody within who had said that we have a deal, and maybe he then retracted and said, listen, I'm getting cold feet. So I'm just asking you the larger question. Factionalism is something which is most plausible, as it were?
Absolutely correct. My point is that three narrative what General Chauhan has said, possibly these all three are running parallel. But if we take what question which you have asked, and I am very, very sure that all is not well as far as Russian army is concerned. Remember that when you are taking use of a private army, it means your own professional army is not worthy of fighting. Are we supposed to say that tomorrow when we have to fight against Chinese, we will take help of some private army? So private army is not bounded by any rules and regulations. They are not trained in army fashion. They are not under Geneva Convention. So they can behave in a very indifferent manner. So therefore, the way this private army has been now almost become a main part of Russian army, the Russian army is not done well in this war. They have not performed well. Their success is not to that extent worthy of their name, that they are second best military power in the world. And everyone thought that they will capture Ukraine in another 10 to 15 days. It did not happen. They did not get much success. If there are success, they have got it. It is Wagner Group, whether it is Soledar or Mariupol, or you can say Bakhmut. So therefore, the point is that Wagner Group and Prigozhin became larger than life. They became an important people, and they have a backing of Russian army and also the people of Russia. The reason is very simple. In case we accept this theory that they did it themselves, but if they have done themselves, there are two things which stand out. It means that they are part of a Russian army which is with Prigozhin, because the way he took this Rostov without even firing a bullet. It is a military headquarters. It is a district military headquarters in southern part, which is fighting a war in against eastern part of Ukraine.
All right.
Second thing is, without firing a bullet, then they moved from there to Moscow. They came almost about 200 kilometers.
Right.
A private army almost dictating term to Russia.
So
the
you're
question
saying,
is
so
that
you're
the
saying
whole
there
thing-
is factionalism within the Russian army.
100%.
There is
They
a
are
chink.
weak.
That's what you're
They
saying.
are weak.
Let me just go to Lieutenant General Chauhan, then I'll come to the ambassador. You know, Lieutenant General Chauhan, you know, Putin is known for not so much as national security as regime security. I mean, that's one opinion. Now, look at the entire, I mean, this reads like a pulp novel. So, taking this into account, do you think that he's actually, what I was saying in my introduction, is that perhaps he's waiting in the wings when the time is right? He will seek revenge from somebody he hoisted, who was known as the chef, someone who sold hot dogs, someone who knew this man, the head of the Wagner militia. No one knew him. It was due to Putin. So, do you think that there is going to be revenge? But jab waqt sahi ho tab.
Sudha, absolutely. If it is not a charade, then definitely there is an issue where Putin will get back. But the issue is, firstly, let's take the war front. Let's take the Ukraine front. Has it affected the Ukraine front? Did this movement of 25,000 Wagner Group soldiers affect the defensive lines? No. They are used as shock troops, they're used as offensive troops, and they helped in the taking over of Bakhmut, but they are not holding defenses. So that's the first issue, that his moving out did not affect the defensive positions of the Russian army at all. Secondly, can an army like the Russian army have factionalism? I, as the GOC 1 Corps, had a very large major exercise with the Russian army, with their division which had come over. And we spent almost 6 weeks together. I am absolutely convinced that they are extremely professional, and there is no question that there is this issue of factionalism. Professional armies don't have factionalism. They don't have these issues that the third world countries of like in Africa or some other places have. They don't have those issues. So I'm very convinced about that this could not have happened. And Wagner Group by nature, if you see their background, and I used to read about it quite often, is that their majority of their interests are actually Russian interests being forwarded in Africa. Prigozhin had made his billions in Africa. So it doesn't stand to reason, Sudha. It really doesn't.
All right. Yes. All right. Ambassador.
I personally feel
yes, sir.
that there's a Russian attempt to try and move Prigozhin's troops from Belarus.